The World Baseball Classic is rapidly approaching as pool play is slated to start on March 7th with an opening night matchup between Luis Robert and Cuba facing off against Xander Bogaerts and the Netherlands. This will kick off a 2-week stretch of some of the most exciting baseball games ever played and should result in some extremely entertaining games. Now, I've already talked extensively on this channel about what the World Baseball Classic is, and I've also given out my power rankings. However, in today's video, we will be going over my predictions for the tournament. Welcome to NMR Sports, a channel where we talk baseball as much as humanly possible, and these are my 2023 World Baseball Classic predictions. Now, a quick overview if you're not familiar with how the tournament works. There are 4 pools comprised of 5 teams each for a total of 20, and only the 2 best teams in each pool will advance to the quarterfinals. The quarterfinalists from pools A and B will then play each other to determine who goes on to the semifinals, and then the same thing with pools C and D. After that, they will move on to the semifinals, which will all be played in Miami. And then the winner of the semifinals games will go on to the championship game, which will be played on March 21st in Miami, Florida. There are some tiebreakers if teams end up having the same records in their pool play, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Win your games and win them by a lot of runs. And now that we know how the tournament works, let's go on to my predictions, starting off with Pool A. Now, Pool A, I will say, feels like a little bit of a weaker pool when it comes to the 3. There aren't any super heavy hitters in this one outside of maybe Cuba, but there's 3 teams in my mind that are kind of on the same level where I feel like they're competitive. They're not the worst teams in the tournament, but they also, in my opinion, don't have much of a chance to make it to the quarterfinals, and that would be, unfortunately, Italy, Taiwan, and Panama. All 3 of these teams have major leaguers here and there. They have a little bit of major league talent on them. Panama has Jaime Barria and Christian Betancourt. Italy has David Fletcher as well as Vinny Pasquantino. And Taiwan has a couple of other names on there as well. If I had to pick one as the favorite to upset the other 2, that would probably be Italy. I feel like they're a slightly more well-rounded roster, but I wouldn't expect any of these 3 teams to make it out. And with that being said, the 2 teams I have leaving Pool A are going to be the Netherlands, headlined by Xander Bogaerts, and of course Cuba, headlined by Luis Robert. Now, these 2 teams are going to be playing each other opening night, so it's going to be a very entertaining game to watch. I will be live streaming it on my channel, so be sure to check that out. I definitely think Cuba is the better team, but I think the Netherlands are pretty sneaky. Like I said, they have Xander Bogaerts, they have Kenley Jansen, they have Pedro Strop, Jonathan Scope, Andrelton Simmons, Jurickson Profar, Didi Gregorius, and while some of these names aren't huge, they do tend to come up clutch in the World Baseball Classic, facing off against some below average pitching. And this year will be interesting with Cuba because typically they're mostly unknown because it's very hard to defect from Cuba, of course, but this year they are having some major leaguers play on their squad in the aforementioned Luis Robert as well as Yoan Moncada and Yoenis Cespedes. So we'll see what happens, but I definitely have those 2 advancing from Pool A. Moving on to Pool B, similar story except for the talent level. For 3 of the teams is down here and 2 of the teams is just through the roof. The 3 teams that I don't want to spend too much time on, of course, that is China, the Czech Republic, and Australia. If I had to pick one of those 3 to be a little bit of a challenge, I'd say Australia, but as a whole, Japan and Korea are going to run this bracket or this pool, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Japan has an absolutely stacked roster, headlined by Shohei Ohtani, Lars Nootbaar, Yu Darvish, and new Red Sox outfielder Masataka Yoshida. And Japan, I'll be honest, takes this tournament the most serious out of any country, and they have a massive rivalry with Korea as well. So those 2 I definitely have moving on out of this bracket. Next up, we got my home country's pool, that is Pool C. Now, Pool C, I think, is a pretty well-rounded bracket, if I'm being completely honest. Of course, the United States seems to be the favorite with how great their lineup is, but I do have some concerns with their pitching. Mexico's a solid roster, Colombia, even Canada's pretty solid. I'm very worried about Great Britain. They might get embarrassed, but overall, I would give Canada an outside chance at making the quarterfinals, but I am going to have the United States and Mexico moving on. The United States lineup can at least carry them to the quarterfinals. I'm not sure how much further. We'll see where I have them in my predictions. And Mexico overall is a pretty stacked roster, and I actually like their pitching more than the United States. So Mexico definitely moving on, as well as the United States. And last but certainly not least, the most entertaining pool in this tournament, that is Pool D. And I'm going to eliminate 2 teams before we even start talking about it, in Israel and Nicaragua. The top 3 teams in this pool are just too good. I'm sorry, they have some good players on their rosters, but there's just way too much talent in the 3 teams above them. Next, we'll talk about the runner-up from the last 2 World Baseball Classics in Puerto Rico. They got stomped on in the finals last year, and they also lost in the finals to the Dominican Republic on their undefeated 2013 run. Now, I feel bad about this, but I don't have Puerto Rico moving out of this pool because of how stacked the 2 teams above them are. Puerto Rico, of course, headlined by Francisco Lindor. They got Jorge Lopez in their pitching staff. Marcus Stroman's there, Jose Barrios, Javi Baez, and they're being coached by Yadier Molina. So while I love this team and I think they're going to be exciting, I just don't have them moving on because I've got Venezuela and the Dominican Republic moving on. Venezuela is my pick for the most underrated team in this tournament, and the Dominican Republic might have the greatest roster ever assembled. I don't even know who I would consider the headliner of the Dominican Republic team, so I'll just name a couple of players who could be the headliner: Sandy Alcantara, rookie phenom Julio Rodriguez, Juan Soto, Rafael Devers, Wander Franco, World Series MVP Jeremy Pena, you name it. This roster is absolutely loaded. It's a bummer that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just pulled out, but this roster is still insane, and there's no shot that they miss the quarterfinals. And that is it for the pool play. So we have the quarterfinals matchup set. Like I said, pools A and B are going to face off against each other, and it is the 1 seed versus the runner-up. So the 1 seed from pool A is facing off against the runner-up from pool B, and then vice versa. Same thing with pools C and D, if you track me. So in my predictions, that would be Japan facing off against the Netherlands. And of course, I have Japan winning that matchup. The Netherlands are just no match. I think it might be an embarrassing matchup, but the Netherlands have surprised us in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if they, made some noise, but I don't think against Japan that's going to happen. And then on the other side of things, I have a huge upset here. I don't know if a huge upset, but an upset in my opinion, and that is Korea beating Cuba. So Japan and Korea booked their tickets to Miami to head to the semifinals. And then over in the US in pools C and D, I have the United States beating Venezuela. However, I don't feel great about that prediction. I think Venezuela is a more complete team. Go ahead and sue me. The US clearly has the better lineup, but I think Venezuela has a more complete team. I'm just saying. And then, sorry Mexico, but I have the Dominican Republic just absolutely stomping all over them. They had a good run though. They made it to the quarterfinals. Next up, we've got the semifinals, and we have the most anticipated matchup in Major League history. We have one of the greatest players of all time. I have his jersey on my wall, and Mike Trout facing off against this bobblehead right here. The man, the myth, the legend, the unicorn, Shohei Ohtani. That's right, Japan versus the United States. And I'm sorry, United States, but I have you falling to Japan, with Japan moving on to the finals. I just think Japan takes this tournament more seriously. The US is going to be playing, I'd say 75%, while Japan's playing 110%. And I think those Japanese pitchers are going to be able to get it done versus our United States bats with their funky deliveries and the different ways that they pitch over there. I think it's going to be too much for the US. And then that leaves our last semifinal matchup with the Dominican Republic facing off against Korea. As much as I would like to ride with the boys there in Korea, I do have to give this to the Dominican Republic. Like I said, that roster is just way too stacked, which sets up, in my opinion, the most exciting final in World Baseball Classic history. We have the unicorn Shohei Ohtani facing off against one of the best lineups ever constructed. It's an absolute slugfest. It is a brutal matchup, and as much as I love my man Shohei Ohtani, the, in my opinion, most talented baseball player to ever live, the Dominican Republic is just too much, and I have the Dominican Republic winning the finals. I know it's definitely not a bold take. I'm definitely not going out on a limb here, but let's be honest with ourselves. You can't look at that Dominican Republic roster and imagine them losing a baseball game. I know any team can beat any team on any given day, but you gotta, if you're doing a prediction, come on. If you don't think the Dominican Republic's winning this tournament, I appreciate your spirit, but I just don't know how it could happen. So anyways, that is going to do it for my World Baseball Classic predictions. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I will be live at 11 p.m. Eastern time on March 7th. That I believe is Tuesday. Yes, that's Tuesday, for a watch party on opening night. I will have some other watch parties scheduled coming up here soon. I'll definitely be live for Japan versus Korea. I'll be live for United States versus Mexico, Venezuela versus Dominican Republic. It's gonna be a hell of a week, so I hope you guys tune in, and I hope you're there to talk some World Baseball Classic with me. Let's get a roll call going down in the comments of what team you are rooting for in this tournament. I'm obviously rooting for the United States, but I would love to see Japan win it as well. So I'm just excited to see some fun baseball. So I appreciate you guys watching. I will see you all in the next one. I hope you have a great rest of your day.